Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. Today we're going to talk about Ather's new scooter, finally, right?
Yeah.
It's
Been a long time.
It's been a really long time coming. And before we go any further, we're going to park the Rishta family scooter analogy out of the way, right?
Okay.
That's what it's aimed at, right?
Yeah.
Family scooter from Ather.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where would you like to start?
The point you made is actually a good one. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
If you think about it, Ather is now a 10-year-old company. And they took the first 6 years to build out the first 450. And then they've been circling the 450 block with the X, then the Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4 or whatever. And then they added the S. But it's only been the 450.
Correct.
So it's very important that a second scooter arrived of some sort.
Yeah.
It has chosen to do the family scooter, and I understand why. They're looking for more sales, they're looking for more traction. And I wish they wouldn't get distracted by Ola, but Ola is definitely a distraction for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because see, if Ola's sitting there cutting prices left, right and center, prepping for the IPO and all of this, and in the middle of which you've got a 70,000 rupee scooter, which looks terrible, honestly, because they've cheapened it.
Why do you say it looks terrible?
They've just cheapened it out, Karthik. So if you look at the S versus the X, the 450S X, the S doesn't look cheap. And to me, the S is actually the better scooter than the X, apart from the fun factor. But when Ola does this, they take the disc brake off and put a drum brake in the front. Half the plastics at the bottom turn black. Fit finish anyway wasn't great. Now it looks even worse.
Okay.
After we tested the Generation 2 S1 Pro and it did so badly in our tests, we basically said we are not testing products from this company. So
okay,
instead of us getting distracted by Olas, I'd just like to return to Ather, which is what I tell Ather also, saying don't get distracted by this Ola company. On the flip side, what Ather does well is they make good products. Yeah. We've never tested a 450 and come away saying, oh, that was just mediocre. They've done good products. So when they go to a segment that requires a mediocre product, like a family scooter, remember a family scooter can't do too many things too well, right? It can't be too exciting, because if it becomes too exciting, then you'll put off a few members of your family. It can't be too sporty, because if you do that, you'll piss off somebody else in your family and so on and so forth, right? So by design, it has to be a really mild and literally, to use the right word, it has to be the average product. Because on average, everybody in your family needs to like the scooter.
I'd call it a generalist.
Yeah, see, and I'll give you two examples so that you can immediately understand what I'm trying to say. The Activa 110 and the Access 125 are two prototypes of good family scooters. But the Access still is fun to ride because the performance always feels a little bit punchy. And what Suzuki gets right, it's punchy enough to keep you interested without being punchy enough to make the 70-year-old in your family who still wants to ride a scooter saying, oh, this is too fast and I can't handle it, right? They got it right. The Activa 110 is, relatively speaking, a lot more dull. And we've dealt with it in the View series, so I'm not going to go into it. But Ather could have gone either way. And if you think about Ather's history, you're going to think that the Access is where they would go. And honestly, that's where they started. Because their first reference for how to build a family scooter was the Panamera.
What's the?
Panamera. If Porsche has a 911 as a sports car and they build Panamera as a family car.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
What should the Rizta be like? Right? And they're young, excitable engineers, right? So they started to think about this as, oh, maybe we're doing too much here and we need to take it back a little bit. So if you think about it, a majority of the frame structure in the front is very similar to the 450s. The battery pack is the same as the 450s. Okay. And you get two Rizta models, one with the 2.9 kilowatt hour battery and one with the 3.7 kilowatt hour battery, which is the same as the 450s battery. No changes here. They've changed the subframe, so the seat structure, etc. is slightly different. And they've changed how they extract power from the motor and how much power they extract from the motor, plus styling, design and small elements here and there to create the family scooter. So it is very much an offshoot of the 450 line even today, 10 years later. It's not a brand new scooter in that sense, but thankfully it's not a Panamera either.
So does it get that expensive aluminium frame?
Yeah. See, always remember that frame is part of the heat sink structure of the scooter itself, which is why Athers tend not to overheat. So I don't think Ather is ever going to go away from using aluminium there, because it just works to stabilize thermal efficiency across the board. So they'll do all of those things for sure. So everybody was expecting the Rizta to be brand new, like a completely new platform. It's an offshoot. It's a significant offshoot, but it is still just an offshoot.
And I was curious about how it would look. And
yeah, that's a strange thing, right? How do you go futuristic but not too futuristic, and it needs to look fresh and cool, like Athers are supposed to look fresh and cool, but not too fresh and cool so that people get... And if you take the iQube as an example there...
I was just going to say, they took my favorite scooter, electric scooter, and it feels like a cooler iQube, and which is just right.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's right for Ather.
Yeah, and if you think about the iQube styling, for example, we've commented on this, the iQube began in a great place at the front. And the further back in the scooter you go, the older the scooter gets. And then adding the chrome garnish and the lit labels and all of that, it didn't help the iQube's sense of class a lot, right? Ather is cleverer than that, at least on this one front. So when you see the Rizta for the first time, all the body panels are slightly boxy, but it's not a small scooter anymore in feel. It is a larger scooter. Is it a large scooter? No, I'm going to hold judgment on that.
No, so I'll explain this. Like for me, the 450X is, as much as I enjoyed riding the 450X, it's not something I inherently felt comfortable with. I always, and I'm not tall, right? But even then, sitting on the 450X, I used to feel like it's a little cramped. I don't know, something about it just didn't work for me, right? And I get what you're saying. Like all the other bigger scooters, you feel like a little bit more spaced out.
Correct. So when you ride the River Indy, for example, which is a much larger scooter than the X, it's also larger than the Rizta. You immediately have a sense of not that you're reaching to the handlebar, but there's space in front of you. There's space ahead of your knees. Your footboard is huge, and you have a massive sense of space. The Rizta is somewhere in the middle. Does it feel compact like the 450? No. Super spacious like the River? Also no. Okay. But is there enough space for you to not even think about space ever again? Yes, that's what they've got right.
Is it fair to say that it would be about as much as the Access or the
little bit better than the Access, I think. Okay. Jupiter is a better reference because Jupiter is, the 125 Jupiter is perhaps the most spacious of the ICE scooters. It's also the most, it's the freshest recent design where they significantly re-engineered the scooter. Started with the fuel module having to go under the floorboard like a battery would go. The Jupiter 125 placed it there. That released a lot of space in lots of places. But it also forced a fairly significant restructuring of the scooter itself. So to me, the Jupiter 125 is the freshest in terms of engineering of all of the ICE scooters, and it reaps the benefits of that. The Rizta more or less falls into that kind of a zone. In fact, Ather said that they will build the biggest seat on the market. The next biggest seat is the Jupiter 125.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to be. So in terms of size, in terms of sense of
and it's an Ather, so finish levels are great. There are little thoughtful details. I think the Bajaj Chetak actually has even more thoughtful details. And I was as surprised as you are. The Chetak has a lot of interesting rider-friendly detail, and rider-friendly not being enthusiast rider, just the person who's operating the Chetak. There's lots of small things, like the seat stays open at whatever angle you leave it and stuff. The Ather is supposed to do it, but surprisingly, at least on the hardware front, the Chetak does more than the Ather. The Ather does more than the Chetak on the software front.
Give an example of the hardware.
So for example, the Ather Rizta seat, it's a large seat pan, and it's mounted at the front.
Look at the gesture you made.
Yeah, it's huge. Right? Okay, the RI fit into this natively and naturally, which has only ever happened on the River Indy. On the River Indy, you had to maneuver it into place and there was a specific orientation. Not on the Rizta. And the Rizta has a bump at the bottom where the tire protrudes into the despite that.
Okay.
So the Rizta is that kind of spacious. It's big. But it's so big that I think it needs one more mounting point for the seat pan in the front.
Okay.
So when you open the seat, the hinge feels weak and the front of that tray also moves a little bit. Between both of these, the seat never closes in one shot. It needs to be aligned at the end so that it slots neatly into its lock. On the Chetak, not only does the hinge feeling weak thing not happen, it also has a spring. So you just take it and leave it here and the seat stays there. So one step up in the hardware like that.
Okay.
Right? The Ather's charge port, for example, is spring loaded to close. But that makes it quite inconvenient because you need two hands now, one to open it and one to plug it in. It doesn't stay where it is. Or even if it was a damped close, where it would just slowly close itself, so you have time to plug it in and then the flap will come and rest on top of the charger. No, it doesn't.
And what about all the other stuff like the screens and the switches and all of that?
It's all from the 450S.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. So,
does it have warp?
No. Okay, so let's see what they've done here, okay? First, on the motor front, it's the same motor, but they're extracting less performance from it. So the top speed falls 10 kilometers an hour from the 450X to the Rizta. So this scooter maxes out at 80 kilometers an hour. We rode around the Nandi Hills area outside Bengaluru, so twisty roads, not always fully flat, always climbing and all of that. Did I feel a lack of performance? Honestly, no. Okay. Then, because they extract less performance, they can add 10 kilometers to the range.
But power is down, but what about torque? Torque is also down?
Torque is the same, 22
torque
Newton
is the
meters.
same,
Yeah. So, there's not a fundamental difference in the hardware. There's not a fundamental difference in the weight. But they're just taking less from this motor and they're taking their time about taking it out. So it's a calmer, gentler scooter. So if you see the 0 to 40, this scooter is a slower scooter. Therefore, it only has two riding modes. One is Smart Eco and the other is Zip.
Okay.
So they've only put two riding modes because they said, look, the more riding modes I put, the more complicated the scooter becomes.
Yeah.
And then it becomes harder to share with members of your family. A youngster will adapt to more riding modes, but an older person may not. It might be too much for them. And I don't doubt that piece of logic because when I rode the 450S, and remember we got the 450S without the Pro Pack,
right,
which is basically like an IC scooter but with an electric powertrain because there was no features at all. It was very nice to ride.
Correct.
I could have asked them to have a better range indicator, a little bit more data here and there, but outside of that, it was very easy to just get on, turn the key, and that's all literally you can do, and then you go.
I mean, imagine it was parked here in the office and we were walking past it and I didn't ride it, but when we were around it, Shumi said, no, you must take a look. And he turned it on, he showed me the display and all that. He said, that's it. But it's so simple and it's so nice.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Simpler can be better.
Yeah. So the screens are very interesting, okay? If you remember, the 450X has a touchscreen TFT color display. And the base 450S has a color segmented non-touch LCD display with the excellent joystick.
Correct.
On the Rizta, the gradation is the same, but the interface has changed for the color screen. Okay. So they've said the 450X can be considered a little bit too youthful, a little bit too aggressive. So they've calmed all the graphics down. It's a piece-oriented in the sense of the colors are muted, pinks and blues, that kind of. It's a calmer, gentler, clearer interface. And it's got two modes, it's got navigation, etc. On the test scooters that we had, the software was early versions and it was super slow and glitchy. Okay, so I'll show you pictures now of parts of the screen. Each of those pictures took minutes to take because we were waiting for the screen to refresh and reload. Okay, in one case there was a village and I'm navigating through this village and it's basically enter the village, make a left, go 10 meters, make a right, exit village. The system recognized that I had exited the village long after I had actually exited the village because it's just running that kind of slowly. Okay. Now Ather says software will update and these glitches will resolve, and I would trust them that they would solve this. But on the day that we rode the scooter, it was in a very poor place because it just didn't do much.
I'm just wondering on this front, the screen was already in use from the X.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The software was already built out.
Yeah, but I think new interface and updating a new interface, they might have changed a few features here and there. Plus they rolled out Ather Stack 6, which is their new software update in the process, which adds more features. I think uske beech mein something has gone awry and they will update. It's
not like they've kind of deconted the hardware or something like that on the screens or...
No. As far as I can tell, the spec is 1-to-1.
Okay.
And I think for Ather, given how many scooters they make, to have the Rizta run a completely different processor and all of that versus the 450 makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that the base Rizta, the S, has the same segmented color LCD display from the 450X with almost no changes at all. So instead of saying whatever, sport, normal, etc., it says Smart Eco and Zip. That screen on the 450S, I think, was the better of the two screens because the interface was so simple that was super easy to use.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that the Ather Rizta S might actually have the better screen of the two once again. And full compliments to Ather for pulling off such a classy LCD display. It's very hard to imagine that in 2024, you'd pull an LCD display out of the hat that works even better than a color TFT.
Yeah.
So in this case, this is the electronics picture. The excellent joystick has been used to create a few shortcuts. We'll discuss those at the end.
Okay.
In terms of riding, I was a little surprised at how slow Smart Eco is. Okay, remember what they've done is they've reduced the power that they're taking out of the motor. So everything is slower, which amounts to 10 kmph lost in top speed, but 10 kmph gained in range.
10 kilometers gained in range, okay.
Yeah, so whether you...
And that range goes up to 100?
159 on the 3.7 kilowatt hour battery versus 150 on the previous scooter, roughly 153 or something, and it goes up to 120 something now, whereas it used to be 110 something previously. So if you take a 2.9 battery scooter and you can get the S and the X in 2.9, you'll get roughly 110 IDC ranges. These are not real world numbers. And if you take the 3.7, which is only available as the X, then you'll get 159 IDC.
Okay.
Okay, 70% of that is roughly what you're looking at as a real world number. Right?
Understood.
But when I took it out in Smart Eco, first slope and I'm at full throttle and I enter this slope doing 45 and then it starts to lose speed as it climbs, and over the course of the next 150 meters of this slope, I exit doing 30. And to me, that's a flag. Why should it do that? Because how is this thing going to climb flyovers? Because there are flyovers that are definitely steeper than this one slope. So then obviously Nandi Hills was next. So I went up. It never falls below 18 kilometers an hour. But it is so aggressively protecting your range that it basically will not give you performance. So if you live in a relatively flat city, I think Smart Eco has enough performance. But if you live in a hilly place, or the city you live in has places where it goes up and down the hill quite a bit, I'd like you to check out Smart Eco up one of those slopes before you commit to buying a Rizta.
Was Smart Eco supposed to be, well, smart, like?
You can prioritize one of the two. I think on the Ather, performance got a lot more priority than it gets on the Rizta. They've reorganized their agenda. So look, it's the only eco mode you've got and you can't switch off the Smart. And it prioritizes range above all else. So to me, if I were Ather, I'd consider one of two things. One is, let me switch off Smart so I can access eco in full performance. Because what it's doing is it's limiting how much torque the motor will give you right now. The other way to do it is the Bajaj way to do it, which is when I open the throttle beyond a certain point, let me temporarily go into zip mode and then kick me out of zip mode 10 seconds later or whenever I close the throttle next, is a smarter way to ride this scooter than it is right now.
Okay.
I was a little surprised at how conservative they've been on the performance, because in zip mode it feels actually completely
But you also spoke about flyovers. Like, how much of an issue will it be in that kind of a scenario?
It will lose speed climbing for sure.
Okay, so what feel that I'm getting is that whereas with the 450X, you felt in command, and like, let's say on the road, you were actually in a way like somebody who's carrying authority. You were on a scooter, but that electric made you feel steps ahead of the traffic.
And this is not the Rizta's agenda at all. So even in zip mode, it's not like, whoa, so fast. Never. It's calm, it's calculated.
But in the same scenario?
No, there's no problem in zip mode. This is the algorithm messing in Smart Eco alone.
So in zip mode,
there is no problem. It's not fast. I cannot call.
That's fine.
I cannot call the Rizta fast in zip mode. It is quick enough. After that, then it is a normal Ather. It's just a very calm Ather. Okay, if you remember, 450X was aggressive. 450S was a heck of a lot smoother. The Rizta has that kind of smoothness, but without that level of performance. It's just a little bit calmer in feel. And the assumption is family scooter riders will never go really fast. And I think that is a flawed assumption. So, family scooter rider who wants to go a little bit quicker will have to go back to zip mode. And if you live in the hilly areas, it might be the only mode you'll ever get to use.
And the 159 kilometer, so the scooter starts up in Smart Eco by default?
Whatever mode you left it in, as far as I can remember. Again, my particular scooter had a slightly broken mode switch. So I had lots of trouble switching between the modes. After a while, I just gave up. I checked all the other scooters there. Mine was the one with the broken return spring. So basically, when you switch a mode, it won't recenter. So you'd have to fiddle with it before it recentered. And Ather saying, we don't know why this happens, but this only happens to the scooters that I pick. So I was like, yeah, okay, it has something to do with me, why not? Sure.
But is this what you meant by the Ola parallel? Because this...
No, that distraction is a whole different strategy distraction. It has nothing to do with the product. This is a regular Ather. I see no difference.
Why does it sound like this has been a little rushed?
It is feeling a little bit rushed because I think the announcement on the community day, the prelude to the Rizta was too long. Then the community day happened, and then it's been what, 20 days or 15 days since we waited for the scooter to be actually first ride. And I went to the first ride, then there was glitchy software. My particular scooter had a broken mode switch. So it adds up to look like the picture is worse than it is. But nobody else had these kind of issues apart from the software glitching for various people. Nobody else had broken switches. I had a broken switch. I mean, it can happen. It's okay.
Okay.
And they insisted that I should ride various other scooters. But by that point of time, I'd already consumed, I had 81% when I started, I was already 50% further down that road.
Sure. So I think, okay, I should also clarify. It's because we're used to maybe Ather setting standards which are higher than everybody else's in the EV
Yes,
space.
and these are not production scooters yet.
And so this is an anomaly. This is strange to hear about this stuff from Ather. We're not used to it. And anyways, once you get the test vehicle.
So in zip mode, I don't really have anything to complain about. But I want to set your expectation correctly. It is nowhere close to the kind of bubbly performance that we are used to from the 450 series scooters. It's not meant to be.
Let's take iQube, which we've said is on the calmer side. More recently,
So the biggest difference from iQube to Rizta is actually not the engine performance, it is the suspension.
Aha.
Yeah, which we'll talk about it in a minute. So if you think that the iQube is a reasonably performing city scooter, so is the Rizta. I can't honestly even tell you whether the Rizta is faster than the iQube or not.
Perfect.
Because I rode the iQube here in Mumbai, a relatively flat place, but I rode that at the base of the Nandi Hills where everything was a slope. So honestly, I don't have a frame of reference. Did I feel like zip mode caused me to think, I wish there was more performance? No, honestly, I didn't. Did I miss the last 10 kmph? Yes, I did, but then I would. Right, it's me. On the suspension front, the suspension setup is a lot better than the 450 suspension.
Which isn't really saying much.
But remember, the 450 was designed to be a sporty scooter. These are relatively small suspension units. There's not a lot Ather has done with them, even over the years in terms of retuning and resetting the suspension. This scooter feels a lot more comfortable. But I'm not saying the word comfortable by itself, I'm just saying a lot more comfortable. If you ride it back to back with the iQube, especially if you're a slow rider, you will think that the iQube is a lot more luxurious and plush. There is a flip side to this story. When you start to go faster and hit larger bumps on the Rizta stays composed. This is the area where the iQube S starts to lose control over its composure and it starts to bounce around as the suspension units can no longer absorb the hits. So the iQube might feel like the better setup initially, but I think the Rizta is the better setup overall. I wouldn't call either of these two scooters a marvel of engineering. I don't think either of them achieve any new greatness in terms of how family scooters are set up in India today.
And in terms of tire sizes?
Tire sizes are the exact same as before. So they used to use...
you mean as the 450X?
As the 450X. There is no change on that front at all. Again, look, remember the powertrain, most of the hardware, wheels, brakes, nothing has changed. Big change, rear brake is now a drum. Because this is a scooter that's built to a cost. There's no escaping that. So where the Ather used to have 2 discs, no ABS obviously, you've got a drum at the back. And that's a good thing because the Ather rear brake was pretty sharp, if you remember. It was very easy to lock up the rear wheel, a setting that they have not changed after so many years of telling them that this is too sharp. The drum brake removes that problem. Drum brakes on scooters at the back especially work quite well. You never really suffer saying, oh, it's a drum. You never feel like that, but it's taken that sharp bite out. So it's a very usable set of brakes now. Solved. Solved in, to me, not the classiest way possible, but solved. So it's behind us now, right? They've also covered the bottom in lots of plastic shrouding. Because there was a complaint during the monsoons last year and there was a specific belt related issue where the belts would start squeaking from the filth that was going into the belt. So now the shrouds have gotten ever larger. So if you remember the Apex, it already had a very large cover over the belt. I think it was not possible to do it, but they have. The Rizta has an even larger cover over the rear belt. So the bottom of the scooter as it comes out of the bodywork is just covered in black plastic on both sides. It's not bad looking, it's just, wow, that's a lot of plastic. It makes, for example, reinflating or checking tire pressures on the rear tire a little bit challenging. They do have 90-degree valves, so it sticks out, but they're rubber mounted and it's very difficult to reach. So when you put the tire pressure gauge against it and push it, it just pushes back and releases air instead. So then you have to put one hand around, like it's kind of complicated, but I wish that when manufacturers do 90-degree valves, which is an awesome idea, don't rubber mount them. You destroy some of the functionality of the valve because every time I push, the rubber bends and then it doesn't achieve the result, right? So brakes are good, handling is very good. Again, not sharp. It's very calm, considered, pleasant and trustworthy. And I think trustworthy is a very good word for this scooter in that sense. Comfort levels, you'll be okay. Seat is good. It's a massive seat. And it's not so massive when you look at it the first time, you won't notice it. When you sit down on it and you start scooching back and realize you still haven't hit the halfway mark and I'm 6 foot tall, then you really start to think, yeah, this is a big seat. It's also reasonably flat. So unlike on the 450s where you sort of slide forward a little bit, it doesn't happen on the Rizta. So they've solved that.
So this will be good for going triples?
Idea is you shouldn't be going triples, even though he suggested it. But the idea is if you were, for example, carrying a backpack with you to school, you could put the backpack between your legs and then your parent could be riding the scooter in front, and you'd have enough space for the backpack between you and the parent without you feeling kind of squeezed. In that sense, the space is useful. You can misuse things, but you can misuse anything. So, Ather cannot solve human behavior. I mean, we've been trying to do some of it.
No, because invariably that is, I mean, I remember, which was it? There was some motorcycle in which they
Kinetic.
Somebody had done
Which
that.
had a floorboard on one side.
Oh,
Do you remember? Challenger or something? It was a long seat and it had a floorboard on one side, and they basically said, yeah, a lot of people ride 3-up, so we designed it to be easy to ride 3-up, and then there was like a full horror show because all the journalists were like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah. Okay.
So, so overall, it's a very pleasant, calm, unexciting, trustworthy scooter, which are to me the right values for a family scooter. Then of course Ather does its usual electronically on top of all of this, right? So for example, they said this is the safest scooter that we can build, so they've got traction control. Okay, and it's the simplest thing on earth. They compared the two wheel speeds, so which they added a wheel speed sensor. If the rear one spins up, cut torque. So they're saying that we can cut torque at 1000 hertz. So we can intervene 1000 times a second. Doing 1000 times a second on a ICE is very difficult because there are so many moving parts on the chain, whereas here is just telling the motor to produce less, right? So they're saying reaction time is so good that you can't tell whether it worked or not. And that is true. It's stupid, but it's true.
How did you try it?
I did, and I think I have one GoPro clip of the traction control light. It's called skid control officially. So SC, it's a tire with an SC in it. I have a photo of that thing flashing away at me, and there's no sign that anything is happening.
You were in a corner? What?
No, I basically found a dirt thing next to the road, came to a stop, and then whacked it, and in zip mode, so it should spin. I mean, it's electric, it makes torque quickly.
Instead, it just accelerated.
It just accelerated away like I did the most normal thing on earth, and it's only later I'm looking through the GoPro footage to see if the damn thing blinked or not, and I think it did. But it is good enough for you to never realize that it works. So Ather is going to market the crap out of this, I'm sure, because they have built a good system, and if you use it, you're never going to feel it. So I don't know, it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for what it's worth, it works. What I would have hoped that they'd built instead was ABS. Which legally they're not required to. But if they're going to talk about making the safest possible scooter, then I think the bottom of that pyramid is first ABS.
Not even offering it as an option.
I don't think that they have a deployable production-ready ABS system at all. Remember when Ultraviolet did that, they worked with Bosch, and Ultraviolet claimed to have the first electric ABS system, because remember, when you put ABS into an electric, you have to deal with regen. So when I do this, regen comes on, then there's the physical disc, then there is the ABS system that has to intervene when a lockup happens. It's not as easy as doing it on an ICE because regen itself is a pretty complicated system.
But why does ABS have to interfere with regen?
Because it's all part of the braking movement. So for example, when the wheel starts to lock up, you have two systems that are causing the lockup simultaneously. One is the regen system and one is the hardware braking system. Where does ABS start to intervene and how do you play with both against each other? And on this again with Magic Twist, remember Magic Twist?
Yeah. So this has Magic Twist?
This has Magic Twist and a much better setting. So it's a gentler setting. And therefore it feels more controllable. And if you remember, when we spoke about Magic Twist, we had two issues with it. One is it wasn't very consistent. And I think there are still consistency issues with the Magic Twist system. And consistent meaning, if I do this, will it do the same thing every single time? Which I expect my brakes to do. But they hadn't achieved it yet. They'd gotten close, but they hadn't achieved it yet. This time, I came into the hotel to return the scooter with 1 kilometer and 1% of charge left on my scooter. And I had done this once before when I stopped for coffee. So you come down the same slope that I spoke about in the beginning. You come down the slope and then about maybe 150 meters down is the hotel entry. The first time I was using Magic Twist successfully to enter the hotel without touching my brakes. And it worked. It worked predictably. I was very happy with it. That was with 30% charge left. But when I came down the slope with 1% charge left and I did this, I basically went past the hotel entrance. And I had to intervene with the brakes at the last minute and turn, so there is some inconsistency left. So I asked Ather that is there a relationship between Magic Twist working and the state of the battery's charge, because it's the only variable in this. But I know empirically 30% I successfully used Magic Twist to enter this hotel, 1% I successfully failed. And I had to use the brakes to enter the hotel, so I don't know what's going on.
Which doesn't make sense again.
But I took the scooter at 81% charge. It ran predictably. And there's not a lot of brake force in there. So it actually feels like you can modulate it calmly, and it feels really usable. So there were lots of stretches where I was actively not touching the brakes because I knew what Magic Twist would be able to do, which is to me an improvement over what we saw on the Apex. So whatever they've done, they haven't given us the details. Magic Twist has definitely taken a step forward. Okay. The other systems are still there. So the auto hold system is still there, and their fail-safe system where if you drop the scooter, then it cuts the motor out. So if you lift it by the throttle, it won't accelerate away from you by mistake. Flashing of the lights when you brake hard, all of those systems are still there. Now the fun part after this is that you have WhatsApp in the scooter.
Oh, this doesn't sound Ather at all to me, man.
Yeah, so I was a little bit taken aback by it too, but what they've done is basically there's a small indicator on the dash which will show you have incoming WhatsApp messages. One feature. Second, when you stop, it will show you your last 5 recent messages. And you can't really interact with it as far as I can tell. It can just show you that, oh, mom sent a message saying, where are you? And then mom got upset and sent it 4 more times. That's all. And you can, I think, press upwards 3 times on the joystick, and that's a shortcut to send a live location to a preset contact. So for whatever reason you're feeling unsafe or you're trying to report your location, you click, click, click. Must remember, you have to set up the preset contact first. So it's not like you can select who to send it to. That's not possible. So if I've selected him as my contact, whenever I share live location, it'll go to him. 1. And 2, they couldn't tell us how long the live location would be shared for. So on WhatsApp, if you remember, it says 8 hours, 1 hour, 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what the default setting is, but whatever it is the default setting. It's not like you can select a different setting. So if the scooter shares for 15 minutes, that's what it does. Okay. So in that sense, they've kept the functionality minimal, which I like, but do I need the distraction of WhatsApp on my scooter's dash? Honestly, I'm not convinced. When TVS did the TVS X, they also had this widgetized system where you could see cricket scores and all of this kind of drama. I don't know that I want to see all of this on my scooter screen. Honestly, I have enough distractions in my life without my vehicle screen also trying to distract me the whole time.
And for me, this is it's a scooter. So in that sense, you're living in the urban environment, predominantly in traffic. And so all these things will be more frequent distractions in a more cluttered environment, right? Which is suboptimal for sure.
Yeah, it is more than suboptimal. I would always want the simplest thing possible.
Nothing else like this?
Thankfully, nothing else. No speakers, no drama, no going on. Ather did announce a new helmet called the Halo.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think manufacturers trying to make helmets is an absolutely terrible idea.
Why so?
Because it's not their expertise. Don't do
but
stuff.
But are they actually making the helmet, or they partnered with someone?
Well, they're going to partner with somebody for manufacturing, but the design will come from them. Because Ather being Ather will say aptly things. You know, like helmets are so inconvenient, so we decided to improve the convenience. So we found this great fabric that you can put on the interior cheek pad. Okay, and then we decided that you feel so disconnected from the world, we can build a system that gives you enough traffic awareness but is able to give you music and phone calls and stuff on top of that.
Okay, so it has a intercom built in.
So it has an intercom built in. Then they said, but intercoms are inconvenient to use, so we integrated the intercom. So you've got a plastic band on the top of the helmet at the back, which has all of the hardware in it, and then they built in a very clever wireless charger. Which is part of a system. There is either a 15 or a 18 watt charger in the boot.
Okay.
And you can have a wireless charging attachment which connects to the helmet and charges this device. So convenient, yes, I get it. But when you put this helmet on, across the back of your head is a plastic piece which is full of metal hardware pieces. I would never wear a helmet that does that. Okay, when Arai makes these shells, and I'm using Arai as a reference because to me they make the best helmets on earth, they are very cautious about how to make the shell, what shape the shell is and what goes inside that shell. And they don't do sun visors because they think it's too much hardware entering the shell at this point and that causes other compromises, right? I don't know that I want stuff, honestly, why should I mince my words? I don't want shit added to my helmet in the first place. And then this helmet is 15,000 rupees for which you can get a ECE rated helmet with an ISI certification in India. Why the hell would I spend on this helmet?
But when they build helmets like this, won't it have to pass?
Yeah, they'll pass ISI, and they know so little about helmets that they think saying DOT certified is a good thing. DOT is an inferior standard to the Indian standard in the first place, and it's an honor system, which means what, Ather, if I were to build a random helmet, even I could stand up and say I'm DOT certified. Not until DOT shows up to do a random sample check and disproves me, am I not allowed to say I'm not DOT compliant. You remember those Nazi style helmets, the half helmets with leave half your hair?
Yeah.
No, so they're all DOT certified.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
If you take your baseball cap and leave it in the microwave long enough, that will also be DOT certified. What the hell is this nonsense? So to me, this helmet thing, Ather, I'm telling you, I told you this in person, I'm telling you this again, this is a terrible, absolutely terrible idea. It takes one person in a serious accident wearing one of your helmets for all of this to just become bad PR for you. This is a terrible thing, you shouldn't do it. And of course, they have a half-face version of this called the Halo bit.
No, that's
and then the helmets sync to each other and all of this drama. If you guys were thinking about buying the Ather Halo helmet, please don't do it. There are far better helmets that you can get for the money, and the Bluetooth is not the reason to get one. The convenient charging is not the reason to get one. Helmets are there to prevent you from having a serious head injury. That's all it's supposed to do. The rest of it is all bonus. And in this case, it doesn't look like a good bonus.
But did you try it on?
No, I will never try it.
Why? Without that, how will you know whether it's working or not?
I am not going to be part of a helmet experiment, Karthik. It's not going to happen.
That sounds not fair, to be honest.
I will not be part of the head experimentation process. If it is ECE certified, I would have still tried it because I know it's third party tested to the highest possible standard today. So if Ather were to say that is ECE 2206, I would be a lot more interested in trying that helmet. If they are saying it's DOT, they don't know anything about the standards.
Okay.
If they're saying it's ISI, it passes one of the weakest standards on earth. I have no interest in this.
So you're saying you're willing to try it if it's ECE certified?
Absolutely.
Okay.
At least meet my RI standard, right?
That's all.
Yeah.
I thought you're discounting it just because of the feature set.
It's not a feature set issue. First, I will not ride with this helmet because there's stuff on the outside of my shell which I refuse for it to be there. One. Second, it's not even certified.
No, that's a fair concern. I'm saying if the certification proves that is, let's say, like, what was the last, the showy ones, the one with that very aggressive shape.
They break.
Yeah, exactly. They snap off. They're designed to snap off, right?
Ather never said that we designed it to snap off. That's the first thing they would have said. That yes, we added all of this hardware. The first thing happens in a crash is it separates completely from your helmet and leaves you alone. Then it's a whole different conversation.
Correct. That's what I was trying to understand.
The big flag is DOT. When somebody says my helmet is brand new and it is DOT compliant, they're basically saying we don't know anything about the standards. People who don't know how safety standards work should not be touching safety equipment.
Okay, fair enough.
Right? Back to the scooter. So this is the picture of the scooter. The scooter should start delivering by...
One sec. Price.
Yeah, I'm going to that. So a scooter should start delivering by July mid, and the prices start at 110 and they go up to 145.
So that's below the Ather?
Yeah.
Sorry, below the 450X?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a built to a price. Let's sell many of these kind of scooter. So if you buy the base Rizta S, it's 110X. We don't know what the new EV policy will do in terms of moving these prices around. We'll see. That will happen when it happens. The base models only come in single colors.
Okay.
The upper models come in single colors as well as very nice dual tones.
Yeah.
So there is a navy blue and white which I rode, which I really like. There was a nice bright yellow also, white and yellow, which also looked nice. There was also this weird greenish grey colored scooter end to end. I didn't like the pictures of it, but in the flesh it doesn't look so bad, and there were a lot of people who were fans of that color. So there are some interesting muted and bright colors in the color scheme also. So that's more or less the whole picture of the scooter. There were a couple of gaps in there, I told you. And Ather's also been slightly confusing about their subscription services and their service packages. Service packages, Ather has said they're working on it and they will come. And I'm not sure why there is a delay, because for generally a very clear company, why they had to be unclear about this, I'm not so sure about, but they are, for whatever reason. Ather Connect is included in which is their subscription for connected services. Services is available for 3 years as standard. And I was asking Tarun, saying, why don't you just reveal the price post this 3-year period? Why don't you reveal the cost of the battery post the warranty, which is 5 years or 60,000 kilometers or whatever? And he was like, do you think that...
What do you mean cost of the battery?
One of the big concerns with EVs is that if my battery fails, what do I do? Right? Now, to me, you're already saying, okay, look, 5 years, 60,000 kilometers, we've got you under warranty. Okay. Ather is not very communicative about what happens at the end of those 3 years, but they're quite happy to tell you what happens after those 3 years if you ask them this question.
Okay.
So for a website which is so remarkably clear as a manufacturer website, why don't they just put that information up there?
So what happens after?
So for example, when your Ather Connect runs out at the end of 3 years, it'll going to be a subscription that might be 1,000 rupees or less. So I said, why don't you just put a price and finish this discussion? So everybody knows कि इतना भरना पड़ेगा, right? It's over.
But battery?
And the battery ka scene is that Ather already has a pretty substantial battery warranty program in place. And Ather's data says these batteries hardly fail. There's some magic number in there, okay? Some 3-year-old, 5-year-old Ather running at 90% of original SoC today. So if Tarun were to say, if Ather were to say, for example, that look, the battery costs 45,000 rupees to replace the 2.9, let's say. But the chances that you will end up replacing the 2.9 battery is almost nil. I think it solves more than being unclear about what happens next. And I would just say close that chapter by giving the information out. Some people will worry about this. They'll say, oh, 1 lakh ka scooter kharida, 40,000 ka battery. And maybe they're not your customer today. They're not ready to buy an EV. They'll have an inferior scooter experience because they bought an EV and then worried about it for the rest of their ownership period. Maybe they're just not ready and it's fine. Why should we push you? Let them come to EVs 5 years later when they've realized, hey, nothing seems to be happening to these EVs. Right? So there are some small confusions like this. But apart from that, it's a pretty simple, straightforward scooter. It works quite well, I think. We'll ride it in the traffic properly when it comes here and then we'll have a more closed picture of everything that it does. We rode on effectively empty rural roads with some slopes and that kind of thing. In that environment, it did a reasonably good job.
In fact, the reason the price went up, I did a double take at that point, was because strangely enough, through the entire conversation, the combination of that it is larger, right? That it's their latest product now. And that somehow in the way that you were describing it to me, I perceived slightly higher quality. I don't know why I thought of it, but that's why in my head it started building up as, oh, it'll be as expensive or maybe more expensive.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that I think battery prices have come down to a point where there can be a little bit more rational about prices now. They don't have to make it expensive. And in the Rizta's case, its job is to sell. You know how on the Pulsar NS 400Z we said that if the price is super low and that is the core of the discussion, then by inference, it has to be a thing that must sell. It has no other job. So the Rizta conversation is not that polarized into one aspect of it, but being a popular product is very much part of the Rizta's agenda. It needs to bring the Ather name to a lot of people. In the south of India, in the west of India, where they are a known brand, I don't think they're going to face too much of a challenge. They're going to play the price card hardest in the north and the east, where their traction is the lowest. And it's not even traction, it's just people are not even aware of who Ather is. Okay, there were people apparently, they went to UP or whatever, and people said, "Aapki company India mein kab aayi?"
Achha.
Which means they're completely unaware that this is a Bengaluru-based company. It's been here for 10 years. It's done a lot of the work. This message has not reached them. So their challenge there is how do I open that conversation, and to have a full-fledged family-sized electric scooter for 1,10,000 rupees, I think is a great way to start a conversation. Is it the classiest way to start a conversation? Perhaps not. But will it be effective? Yeah, I think it will be.
Okay, great. Anything else remaining?
You also have Alexa integration. So if you have one of those Amazon devices in your house, then you can walk up to it and say, Alexa, what is the charge of my Rizta? And then it'll tell you it's whatever charge.
But what about charging setup and all?
Same. It's the same as before. No change.
So you can get that home fast charger thingy?
Yeah. There's a new charger which they call Duo.
Okay.
I'll put the charge times up. There's a 350 watt and a 700 watt charger. And the Duo seems to be the idea that it is portable, but there is a wall mounting option also. So you could either wall mount it or you can take it off and put it in the scooter if you like, which is a good idea.
Nice.
I haven't actually seen it. I'll try and get a picture from Ather and put it. But for what it's worth, 2 chargers are there. No fundamental changes on that front. There's nothing magically different happening from the 450X. That's it. Your turn.
Time to go, man. Okay. So the Ather Rizta is the first Ather in a long time that's all new, or is it? It's not really all new because as Shumi said, I was expecting it to be like, grounds up, but there are some shared bits with the 450X. The rear subframe is different because this is meant to be a bigger scooter with more space, and as the name suggests, Rishta, it's about to be for the family, so for many people, and that's why they had to make the rear seat longer, and that's part of the charm of this, that it's a more relaxed feeling, a more friendly scooter for more people in the family, whereas the Ather was very clearly focused on the younger riders or those who wanted something sportier.
Correct.
The design of this is also similarly not sharp. When I saw it, it reminded me of the TVS iQube, but a more modern and more cohesive design, as it were. As with the 450X, you have the same battery options here, which is a 2.9 kilowatt hour and 3.7. And it's even using the same motor, but as would be expected, the motor is less is being demanded of it to provide more smooth and more consistent performance and slightly better range. Top speed has gone down by 10 kilometers an hour and range has gone up by 10 kilometers. So the top spec variant gets a range of 159 kilometers,
right,
claimed IDC, and the lower variant is 120 or thereabouts. It has two modes. One is the Smart Eco and the other is the Zip. Zip.
Yeah, Mahindra. Hello, Mahindra.
So the Smart Eco, strangely enough, felt a little bit inadequate in when Shumi was dealing with inclines, where he found that he lost speed as he went up the incline. It was a distance of about 100-150 meters. As he tackled that, he was on the outskirts of Bengaluru, near Nandi Hills. So nice rolling roads around there. So nothing too serious, but it was a bit of an incline.
Yeah, it's not serious because it's not like it falls to zero. Once it gets to 18.
No, I meant the gradient.
No, gradient was not serious at all.
As Shumi said, in Zip mode, that's not an issue, right? It just, you can comfortably travel even on those inclines, and how it actually performs in traffic, we will see once we have it here in Mumbai. So this thing is just down to how the software has been calibrated for the Rizta, which is meant to be a gentler family scooter. In the Zip mode, it was fine, usable. Is it exciting? No. In terms of comfort, you have the space as a rider. You will feel more at ease, and of course the seat is ultra long, so you could a great example of how it should be used is that, let's say if somebody's sitting behind you, they don't have to hang their backpack off further behind. They can place it between the rider and the pillion and sit comfortably that way. Suspension, and that's something that I was interested to know how it would fare, because that is something I didn't like that much on the 450X, while it is well balanced even with a pillion on board, and that continues to be the case here with the Rizta as well, where it stays clean even as you travel at higher speeds and over bumpier surfaces. It remains more settled than something else like, say, a Jupiter. Sorry, not the Jupiter, the iQube, the electric Jupiter. It feels, the TVS will feel more plush. This has a bit more control to it, so it can be felt as a little bit firm at times, but that's the better setup for a family scooter, which will maybe carry stuff or have people pillion on it more often. Right? The screens are the same as the 450X, which is the TFT, and then you have the basic segmented LCD. You didn't see the segmented LCD?
No, I got pictures. I didn't see the screen.
So as is, it'll still be good. It's useful, simple, and better for it. You get the joystick thingy, which has some shortcuts as well now for you to
send your live location to somebody.
Yeah, correct. And it has WhatsApp integration, it has Alexa integration, which means you can get a status of your scooter's charge, etc. from your house just by asking Alexa. You have 3 years standard warranty and connectivity, post which it will cost about 1,000 rupees a year.
Or less, not exact prices, but they're saying isse zyada to nahi hoga. So I'm saying, why don't you just put it?
In terms of finish, build, this feels solid. It's a well-made scooter. Pricing, which is 110 for the base and 150 for the 145 for the top spec. So it's meant to be a value-oriented scooter, and that's how it's been priced as well. How the exact pricing settles down once the FAME subsidies, etc. are.
We don't know what the subsidy picture is right now. It's in a flux. Some new policy will come, prices will change. But as of today, if you were to book a Rizta, you're expecting to pay 110 to 145 depending on which model you pick.
And deliveries haven't started yet. It will be from
July
mid. Right. Anything
That's it.
start? No? Okay. Tires also the same size as the 450.
Yeah. The only other thing I remembered in the context of the helmet.
Oh, sorry.
I can't let it go because I'm so upset about it. Honestly telling you, when people start doing things with helmets, I really get annoyed because it's mission critical, life-saving equipment. Don't mess with it.
I'm sorry.
I want to say goodbye to the Halo helmet right now only.
Hello.
No, goodbye.
Okay. So you know how to piss Shumi off again, right? Just talk about dot.
Oh, that's like the easiest thing in the world.
Sorry. Okay, fine. ठीक है. So Halo, I'm just gonna glance through it.
No, We will not glance
Okay,
through
forget. Okay,
we will not glance through
forget
it.
about
No,
it.
we will not glance through it. We will not
I mean,
discuss.
an open face helmet.
We will
please don't.
not discuss this any further. You will not buy the Ather helmets. Trust me, it's a bad idea. Get a better helmet. For the money that Ather wants for these helmets, even on the discounts that they're on offer right now, there are far superior helmets that can be had. Don't buy open face helmets at all. You need your jaw to talk. You need your jaw to eat.
Stop, man. Why the?
That's only because you imagine these things. Not all of them are imagining these scenarios, yeah, or as realistic as they are.
Okay, don't buy these helmets. Okay, we'll stop there.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that we missed out? No.
That's it. The Ather updated software suite will go back to most Athers, I think up to generation 3. Please check if you have one of these scooters, you'll get some new features or whatever in the process. Usual. The Rizta is part of the update cycle. So when the next version of software updates come, then the scooter will also get updated. If you do go get a test ride of the Rizta, if you leave us a comment telling us whether your screen experience improved from what we saw or not, that will really help, because we had a really slow screen. Like imagine that I've dismissed a menu and then I'm sort of sitting there waiting for the menu to get dismissed while it is thinking about how to dismiss the menu or whatever. If that improves for you, if you leave us a comment at any point of time, doesn't have to be tomorrow, it will really help us sort of get the picture of the Rizta better. Of course, we will get a Rizta for testing at some point and then we'll have stories on that.
Bellissimo.
That's it. Thank you so much for watching. That's what we know about the Ather Rizta so far after riding effectively one full charge in the foothills around the Nandi Hills outside Bengaluru. So not a representative situation of what you would actually see. So this is what it is. We'll get the scooter for testing and have more details. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please do leave us a comment. We'll try and get back to you with as accurate an answer as possible in these within the limits of what we know. And if you'd like to listen to this podcast audio only, you can go to Apple, Spotify or Amazon. Google, it will go away in June. So while we will upload it, I don't know that post June you'll have access to Google Podcasts. If that's what you use, you have to start looking for alternatives. And we do have a solution coming. You'll see and hear more about it. Maybe by the time this comes out, or maybe a little bit later. Stay tuned for that. We're very excited about it, but we'll tell you more later. Thank you so much for watching.